Yo, come on. What's up? What's up? What's up? So, this is One Life to Live with Dr. Coach A. I myself am Dr. Coach A. Thank you for joining me. Again, this is a podcast for me. This is my views, my take on things. I will upload some interviews that I will have done with a few people, some friends of mine, some people that I have been able to work with. Today's episode is essentially called Who Am I? And this is a little bit for you guys to get to know who I am before we dive into a lot of the topics that I plan on diving into over the course of this podcast. Again, so for those of you who are looking to follow me, again, I am on Twitter at 1Lyf2Liv. That is the number one life, LYF, the number two, LIV, and the number three. And again, you can also follow me on Twitter at Dr. Coach A and on Instagram at Dr. Coach A. If you wonder why or how I got that name, Dr. Coach, it is simply because I did go get a doctorate degree in special education. And therefore, with my background in coaching, I am Dr. Coach A. So, who am I? Um, That's a hard question. And I think for a lot of people, it is an easy question. But I think for people like me, you struggle with that question of who am I? And for me, it's a struggle because I struggle to talk about myself. I don't necessarily like to talk about my own accomplishments or things that I have going on. I do what I do out of the love for what I'm doing and the benefits of helping others and seeing others be successful. So when people ask me who I am, um, it's just a hard topic sometimes. And again, I think as we grow, we kind of become one with who we are, and we are able to say, "Well, I'm a coach, I'm a dad, I'm a husband," and going about life in that manner. You're able to describe yourself in certain ways. But for me, my views of me aren't always the views that other people may have of me. But I hope as you guys get to know me, that maybe you view me in a positive light. I'm sure that we will agree sometimes, and sometimes we can agree to disagree. I'm one of them people that I don't care if I'm wrong. You know what I mean? I don't care if I'm right. If you right, I'm gonna acknowledge it and salute you and say, yes, you are right. And when I'm wrong, I'm man enough to stand up and say, yes, I am wrong. So again, with regards to the question of who am I think I said it already with the fact that I am a coach. I am a doctor in the philosophy of special education. I am a father of two little ones. I am a husband. I'm a brother. I'm a son. I'm a friend. I am someone who prides myself on being able to do a lot of different things. So, who am I? It's a broad picture, it's a large spectrum of things, and I don't like to box myself in. But again, hopefully, you get to know who I am. And from there, you can formulate your own opinions of me and go from there. And maybe when you see me out, you can come shake my hand, dap me up, give me a hug, whatever. And you could tell me how you feel about me. And I hope it's on a positive, note and not anything negative, because I try to be and remain as positive and as humble as I could possibly be. Um, so what made me want to do the things that I do? Yikes. First of all, what do I do? That's a huge question because again, I do a lot of things. I teach. I teach at a local high school in the state of Georgia. I am a special education teacher. Um, I also teach math. So I am a resource teacher. I am also a co-teacher in the field of special education and in the subject of math. I have a background in algebra and geometry and currently in statistics. So I would like to think I'm a smart guy. So what made me want to become a teacher? I think it just kind of goes in par with coaching football these days. Whereas if you coach, you're either a lay coach or you're one of those coaches that's in the building. And a lot of respects, it just means more when you can have that coach or that face in the building that can police and patrol some of those kids and even recruit some of those kids and get them to join the team. So that's one facet of who I am and what made me become a teacher. I am also a coach. As I said a moment ago, I'm a father and a husband. Special education. What do I do and why? With regards to special education, what I do is I ensure that those who struggle in education, those who may have some difficulties learning, are able to receive certain accommodations, modifications, and resources to make learning a little bit easier for them. Everybody doesn't learn in the traditional sense, and everybody doesn't learn everything the same way. So I provide ways for certain individuals to be able to learn a little bit differently. Even if that means, if your way of adding 1 plus 1 is just simply putting up two fingers, then that works for you. For some kids, it might be I got to get two blocks out and say, now, how many is that? So that's who I am with regards to the classroom and special education. From a sports standpoint, for me, I have been a head track and field coach. I am currently also a football coach. I no longer coach track and field. I'm still involved in it, and I try to help those around me who need me as a resource as much as possible. But I am definitely a football coach. And from that standpoint, I coach right now wide receivers. I have been a defensive coordinator, and I've made my bones, as people would say, coaching in the secondary, be it safeties or corners, and I've been able to develop a pretty good reputation of doing that. Um, I can say that I dove into education because I knew I was somebody that people who look like me, people who come from where I come from, needed to see. And so because of that, I felt like it was the right thing to do, if that makes sense. I can recall being in the third grade, and during that time, we were doing some research. And, third graders doing research usually doesn't go too well. But this case in particular, we were researching homeless people. And for me, it was developing that empathy for others, being able to see people that were less fortunate, that didn't have as much. And not saying we had a whole lot growing up, but we had more than some. And so for that, I'm always grateful. But being able to see people that were homeless and being able to see people that were much less fortunate than I was, it always made me want to dive back in and help somebody else, not necessarily be in that situation that they were currently in or might be getting ready to walk into. Um, in that process of doing that research, I can remember where we took a field trip to visit I think it was called a food bank. And that food bank was down in Athens, Georgia. And when we walked in the food bank, I remember one of the kids who was like making jokes in class about, the homeless people, and basically made this comment about how it wouldn't be him, it couldn't be him. And when we got in, his grandmother and one of his little cousins walked in. And so I think for him, it was a big eye opener. And for myself, it was a huge eye opener because it showed me that, that type of stuff can be very, very close to home. And so I knew that for myself, I could have a positive impact. I could be a positive role model on a lot of different people. And so I never wanted to not give back, in a sense. I guess you could say it from that standpoint. Um, I can even recall myself on my own prom night where we get a limousine. Me and my date, is my junior prom. We get a limousine, me, my date, couple friends, and through that process, we end up running into, homeless people downtown Atlanta. And from there, I recall it's one of my favorite restaurants in the city. And we go to Pascal's and we eat. And as we're walking out, it's homeless people walking everywhere. And I'm thinking to myself, like, man, I just ate good. Like, why can't this guy, this lady have a meal? And so I remember, just taking my food, wrapping it up, and passing it out to basically the first homeless person I saw when I walked outside. So for me, growing up, that was just a part of something that was instilled in me in the 3rd grade, and I wasn't a perfect child. I wasn't a perfect kid. My mom could tell you a many of stories, and I got some teachers that, could tell you a lot of different stories, a lot of different situations. And, I myself had a teacher who told me, Devin, you are really smart. You are super intelligent. However, you're one of those kids that you're either going to be very successful or you are going to go to jail. Um, and when she told me that, I was kind of like, what? Like, you really think that of me? But luckily, I was able to choose the you're really smart. You're going to do something and be very successful route as opposed to the alternative. Because again, that's something that I saw a lot of people. Um, that was the steps that I saw a lot of people taking as I was growing up. So, some of the things for me that I saw growing up, like I said, they changed how I thought about things. And for me, they affected me a lot. And I was one of those kids where one of the best sayings I would always hear was life and experience is the best professor, meaning I could tell you a bunch of stuff, but until you live it, until you go through it, you're probably not going to understand the lesson that you're supposed to get out of it. And for me, I didn't have to experience it. I would listen to all them stories and take all those lessons and think to myself, that won't be me. That can't be me because I'm going to take the piece of this story and I'm going to apply it to my life and go about it the way that I feel like this person telling me this story wants me to go. I would tell people all the time, growing up, one of the people that was very close to me because he stayed right down the street from me in my neighborhood was a guy who was a drug addict. And, he was a drug addict. And like a lot of people, they grow up in those environments. And for me, this guy was somebody I would see that was very high functioning. And I didn't even realize he was as bad on drugs as he was until I'm in college and I'm talking to his daughter, and she was like, "Yeah, it's bad now," But I remember him growing up, watching him, and I would see him go buy drugs, but then get up the next morning and go to work every day and come home and take care of his family. So I would see how he moved, and I would listen to the advice that he would give me, knowing what his vice was and still be able to apply it, and him having that vice still wanting to give me something that I could possibly use growing up. So again, I paid attention to my surroundings. I was very aware of what was happening. I knew, right across the street what was happening when those guys were standing out there and the cars would stop, or people would walk up to them and they were having those hand-to-hand exchanges, and they're selling drugs. And big thing that if you grew up in the 90s and early 2000s, and you still see it now playing its parts today. You grew up in the 80s, you was an 80s baby, or however you want to word it, drug dealers, and that glorification has always been a thing. And so even myself, I had friends and family members who sold drugs, and not saying that in any way to glorify it. I'm just saying that for us, that was something that was very glorified. There was a magnitude, a very bright light that was shined on it, because those were the people that had everything. They had all the cool cars, they had all the jewelry, they had all the women. Um, but still in seeing that, like, you could see the dark side of it. And so again, for me, I'm learning from watching those guys live that life and seeing the shootouts. Seeing those guys and some of those ladies, go to jail and accepting the consequences that come along with that. And I saw movies and stuff growing up, and I knew for a fact that I didn't want to go to prison. I didn't want to go to jail. There was nothing there. Sitting in a cell, whatever, how big it is, 8 by 9, 6 by 9, whatever, sleeping in the cell with another male. There was nothing about that that was enticing or made me want to go that route. So again, like I said, I paid attention. I listened to a lot of people. I took the advice that was giving to me, and I tried my best to apply it. And in doing so, taking that same advice that was giving to me then and applying it to those around me now. Where I could give a kid a story, and sometimes kids will listen to them, and sometimes they'll take what you want them to get out of it, and sometimes like everybody that's a little knucklehead or got a little knucklehead in them, they just think, it'll never happen to me. So I've seen all that stuff, and I've heard a lot of that stuff, and for me, luckily, I was able to, as I said, just walk a different walk. um Struggling kids and parents, that was always a big thing for me. I can remember seeing parents that were struggling with drug addiction, um, looking at those kids when they were on their way to school or outside in the summer, and you can see the effects that it has on everybody. You can see the effects that it has on the neighborhood, on the community. So me growing up, again, seeing that kind of stuff, it always stuck with me, um, to the point where I don't do drugs. I drink a little bit, smoke a little cigar, something like that. But for me, I don't go out and go crazy and do anything that is going to have any negative effects on my children. I'm even through recording this, I'm trying to be careful as far as what I say, because I don't want my kids to get some backlash later in life on, your dad said you was gonna be this, your dad said you was gonna do that, when they go older. And again, it's just about having respect for my wife, my parents, the people that are around me. So from that standpoint, again, just looking at the struggling kids and the parents that I would see, and I'm not just talking, drugs. I mean, financially, looking at how people struggle. My mom being a single mom, raising 3 boys, so watching her struggle and remembering and recalling things we had to go through. Those type of things will always, stick with me and have effects on me. And I learned a lot through it. I've got to make sure my kids understand, life ain't easy, that some of this stuff is going to be hard because they need it and it's going to make them better. Um, my own siblings. A lot of people don't know this, but I've got, 2 brothers. I've got some stepsisters. I've got stepbrothers that, I don't like referring to them as step brothers and sisters. We've got different dads and different moms and things like that. But I've got several siblings, and my 2 siblings that I'm the closest with, yikes, I think they both spent over 10 years in prison. And that's not together. I think you do the math and you put them together, you get both of them with over 20, almost 30 years in prison, dang near, which is crazy. And neither one of them are 40 years old. So when you break that down and look at the number of years they've spent in prison collectively, um, I always thought to myself, especially over the last few years, of like, man, I don't want no kids to have to experience what I know my brothers have had to experience, and having conversations with them and seeing how those walks have changed how they think, changed, the way they do things, and also, taking away time that they can never get back. And I don't want anybody to ever lose time. If you ever get an opportunity, I'm gonna plug a nice little movie with Samuel L. Jackson, where he makes this comment in the movie Fresh, that the only thing wasted in life is time, because time is something you can never get back. And so for me, when you look at that one, life to live tag that I have, is because there was one of me and I had 2 brothers. And so essentially, I was living for all three of us with my life to live. So I had one life, but I'm trying to live it for three people because I understood the process and the situation that essentially I'm placed in, because I got to make sure that when they come home that I'm on my feet. That way, if they need something, I can help them out. And, recently that's kind of changed to, I've got one life to live because it's me and, it's me and my wife. And we've got these two little boys that we got to make sure we take care of. So, you know, one me, two boys, and three people relying on me at all times, being at my wife and my two kids. So I always make sure that that part is something that I understand, and I would do something as corny as, corny to some people, sentimental to me. I would always take a watch. And I would take my watches and I would have nice little, G-Shocks or whatever. And I would always strap them to my book bag. And the reason I would do that is it was just a reminder that my book bag's always going with me. And if my book bag's moving, my clock's moving, therefore I'm always moving. And time ain't stopping for nobody. So it was just my constant reminder that my book bag is usually the way I'm working, right? And then my timepiece, my watch is always just time don't stop. So if I'm not stopping, my bag's always on the go, clock's always moving. It's just that constant reminder to me that times don't stop. You got to keep going. You got to keep going. I got to keep going. And so for me, it was a big piece of the way I did things for, man, probably like 10 years of me putting watches on my book bags until, I finally reached the point where I was like, all right, I got it. I get it. Um, and again, just me myself. Um, so, the next piece is like, who are the mentors, not just my mentors. Because for me, my mother, I felt like laid the biggest foundation for us in the fact that she did so much. She sacrificed so much. And I remember asking my mom one time, like, yo, what'd you want to be when you were growing up? Because I remember she said at one point, like, she wanted to do ballet, which was why she tried to sign us up for tap dance or something like that. So because of that, now I know I got to sign my kids up for tap dance just because my mom always wanted to see us in tap dance. Um, but my mom's big thing that she wanted to be was a mother. And to me, it was kind of like, what? Like all the stuff in the world you want to be? You want to be a mom? But I get it now, as a father. I understand that whole thought process because you want to be able to help someone and you want to be able to lead someone and teach someone and nurture and care and do all that stuff for someone else. And so for me, like I said, my mom was one of my mentors. My uncles, my uncles have been some of my mentors. I've learned a lot from my uncles on both my mom's side and my dad's side, and my mom's my biological father's side, those uncles. And I say that because I call my dad my mom's husband, which is, I won't say his name, but he knows who he is. And so for me, looking up to them, my mom, my dad's big thing was always, I don't care what's going on, I know I gotta make a way. I know I gotta take care of everything. So that's kind of where that piece got instilled in my head is, I gotta take care of everything. I gotta take care of him. I gotta take care of him. But in the process of doing that, I also learned I gotta make sure I'm taken care of as well. And so, you know, having a wife that wants to take care of me, super important. So she's also somebody I look up to. But back to my uncles. So my uncles, being able to watch them and see how they do things. And I won't say their names or go into details about them. I'll give you one. One of my uncles is one of my mom's closest brothers. I think he's the one right older than her, just above her. My mom's got a lot of siblings. But the way he would dress all the time, and he would always have the penny loafers and like a polo shirt. And so if you know me, Especially when I was in college. That was just a big thing of mine. I always wore Sperry's just because it reminded me of his penny loafers, and I would always have a nice little polo shirt on. And so that was somebody I always would look up to. My teachers. I had some very amazing teachers in my life. Um, for some of them, you could see and feel their passion in what they were doing because of how they did it. I had a teacher that is currently a principal now. She used to come to class, and this was a lit teacher. She would come to class every day during the course of us reading books, and she would assign us parts, right? And in assigning us parts, depending on what era that book was made in, she would come to school dressed in that era for the day. And sometimes it wouldn't just be the day, it might be a whole week of her dressed like we were in the 40s. And so you talking about like them crazy dresses women were wearing in the 40s, like that's what she would be in. And it was super cool. It was nice to see somebody that wasn't afraid to do something outside of the box. And it was nice to see somebody that was willing to do something and not worry about the critique that would come behind it. And so for me, that was something that I learned from that teacher. Um, I also had other teachers who just would pour so much into me. Like I said earlier, I had a teacher who told me, you're either going to be very successful or you're going to be in jail. And why did that stick with me for so long, for all those years? And again, it was that simple fact of there was a teacher who really thinks I'm smart. And it kind of offended me too, because it was like, yo, you think I'm smart enough to be very successful, but stupid enough to do something stupid? Like, I was doing stupid stuff, but I wasn't doing nothing stupid, crazy to get me sent to jail, get me in any type of major trouble. But the fact that she wanted to forewarn me, the fact that she thought I was this super intelligent little black kid, it always just stuck with me. So that's why, I harped on, or I will always harp on the fact that, that part was you're very smart, but you're either gonna be in jail or you're gonna be very successful. And so because of that, like I said, it stuck with me for so long. And I hold on to it like everything. Um uh, some of my other mentors are just people I work with. Ed Dudley. Ed Dudley's been such a great mentor to me. And I mention his name because again, this podcast is going to dive into me coaching, going to dive into the world of coaching. And Ed Dudley, in my opinion, is one of the greatest coaches to be able to do to be able to coach in this game, and one of the best people I've got the opportunity to sit down with and share rooms with and just learn from him and just hold amazing and great conversations. And it's so funny because, I'll text him and I'll be like, "What's up, Pops?" Just because he is like that father figure, not just in the world of coaching, but in life, to where he's going to give you great advice. He's going to tell you yay or nay, and it's up to you to decide. Isaiah Berry is a great example of one of those mentors that I had who essentially paved the way for me to do some of the things that I've been able to do. And because of that, it's been a blessing, and it's been, you know, a love-hate relationship with the coaching world because you love what you do. You hate some of the time that it takes to do it. You enjoy the people you get to meet, the networks that you build, excuse me, and all of those things. But those are some of those mentors, and my advice to anybody listening, and my advice to anybody in general, find mentors, find people that you can lean on to ask questions to, find people that are like-minded, and find people that are not like-minded, because that's going to make you think outside the box sometimes, and going to help you and make you think more about a lot of different things. So why I do what I want to do, or why I do what I do. This is what I want to do. Why I do it is because I want to help people. I want to help young people. I want to help those who are in that teenage age group from 12 to 2021, because at that point in time, I feel like that is some of the hardest stuff that kids are going through, some of the hardest times. You've got to navigate a world that's a lot different than what I was going through, a lot different than what your parents were going through. And I want to be there to give you the best advice that I can. I want to be there to provide that shoulder for you to lean on and cry on and ask questions, and somebody that you can look up to by being a positive role model, somebody that you see doing the right thing, and somebody that you see being a leader. That's why I'm doing what I do. That's who I want to help, who I have helped. I could say that in my almighty 13 years. That's crazy. In my 13 years of doing this, I have helped hundreds of kids. And when you're going about helping individuals, you lose track of, how many kids you help get a scholarship, or, how many kids you've helped get to college. I used to have a nice little list that we would input all the time of, how many track kids I've helped go to wherever, how many football players I've helped get Division 1 scholarships, Division 2, Division 3, NAIA scholarships, and all that stuff. But after a while, you lose count of that, and you start to you only thing you remember is, a face and a name and what they're becoming. And you forget about, they were D1, they were D2. Now you just remember the relationships. Um, what I do to help, man, a lot. What I do, I don't think you can really measure it. I don't think you can. I know my wife would probably say I do too much sometimes, because I'm gonna open my home up, if it's needed. I'm gonna let an individual borrow my car if it's needed. I'm gonna go buy kids clothes and shoes and food and everything else you could possibly imagine, just because I don't want to see anybody go without. I don't want to see people that are struggling and not in position to win. So what I do to help, again, I'm blessed to know some people and at different places. So if I can help kids get to college, get recruited, that's something that I'm doing. So I do make sure I do that. So that's a big piece of, again, who I am and what I do. So back to that question again of who I am. Like I said earlier, I think I still struggle to answer it. Um, I'm a lot of things. I think the most important piece is I'm always happy. I'm happy. I'm proud of myself. Um, but I'm a father. I'm a husband, a son, a brother, a mentor. I'm a doctor, a coach, a friend. I'm a passionate person, and I don't really want no accolades. I just want to see everybody else around me be successful. And if I can help you in any way, again, that's all I try to do. Um, that's who I am. That's who I am as a person. That's who I am as an individual. Again, my only objective is to help people. And starting with the three I have at home, be it my wife and my two kids. And if I can do anything to help anybody, you know, just reach out to me. Like I said earlier, the best ways to reach me, you can find me on Twitter at 1Lyf2Liv. That's the number one life, LYF, the number two, LIV, and the number three, or at Dr. Coach A on both Twitter and Instagram. Um, I thank you guys for tuning in. I thank y'all for listening to me tell you who I am. If you're interested in joining me in a conversation, if you are interested in hearing my thoughts on anything, then please hit me in one of them spots. Again, Instagram or Twitter, and let me know. I appreciate you listening to me. Peace out.